Great. Well, good evening. I hope you all taped, put your TVs taping the presidential address, tonight so that you can pick up the rest of it after we're done. But it's appropriate that we have Father Mike Russo with us tonight because politics, media, communication, on government issues, on social issues, it's been his field for forever. From the East Coast to the West Coast, and we're so glad that so many of the years have been here on the West Coast and here in La Marinda area. So you're here with friends, Mike, who know and appreciate you, old St. Mary's College friends, uh, friends that were in your worshiping community at St. Monica's, as well as here at St. Perpetua. So thanks for being with us tonight. And we look forward to sharing some time with you. Let's begin with in a spirit of prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. O powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us this night the power of your love, that we might be messengers of the good news of the gospel, the good news of resurrection. Fill us with peace that we may live as brothers and sisters. O God of the poor, help us to rescue especially those abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Touch our hearts this night and bless all our efforts through Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, good evening again, Mike. The floor is yours. We look forward to hearing. I told the folks over the weekend that you'd share with us some of the background that brought you into that whole communications field, some of your history, and then bring us present day, because what you call retirement, I would not call retirement. You've been as active and busy as ever, but in a whole new dimension. So welcome. And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Good evening, and delighted to be with so many of you. I see Laura's there, all sorts of people that are just such good friends. Goodness, it's so nice to be able to connect with you. When John invited me to say some remarks about my current situation, our Sunday to Sunday project, which so many of you have supported, I thought about it. And then I also thought there's something coming up next month that is really much on my mind. The 29th of May, for some reason, if the calendar is correct, and I know it is, I'll be ordained not 25 years, 50 years, 50 years. That is a lot of time. I was ordained on May 29th, 1971. And I thought I would kind of do a little pivot here. I will be talking about media and ministry, but I want to tell you 3 unique stories. And I'll call them life lessons, my own life lessons. And I'm going to give myself 20 minutes to go through this. And then I'm going to just open it up to questions. And then we'll get more specific, perhaps, about the Sunday to Sunday project. But these are life lessons. My 50th anniversary as a priest. And I'm road testing some of this because it might become valuable to me and to some stuff I'm writing. But these are 3 acts, 3 stories. Act 1, open doors. Act 2, make preaching better. Act 3, apostolic courage. So let's start with Act 1, open doors. I begin in Jersey City, New Jersey, where I was a parish priest. I was a rookie priest in Jersey City in 1971. And St. Aidan's Church was the parish. It was a large parish. We had over 250 funerals a year, which can tell you how many people were there. On Bergen Avenue, historic church. And there are 5 people in the rectory, 5 priests. And one of the things we had in the area was the Jersey City Medical Center, a huge city hospital. And once a month, if you were the young priest on duty, as I was, you were you had a substitute, you had to cover the priest who was the full-time chaplain at the Jersey City Medical Center. Now, quite frankly, of all the things I do as a priest, a hospital chaplaincy is not on the top of my list. However, you have no choice. You're on duty, the phone rings, you go, morning, noon, or night. And something happened maybe in the first year or two on a very hot summer day. I had completed all the masses. Some of the priests were on vacation. I was on duty, but I was also covering the hospital. So what do priests do at like 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, but take a nap? Because, you know, it was a tiring morning. You want to continue in the evening. So you take a short nap and you shut the phone off. Well, it so happened that I could not shut the phone off. It kept ringing and ringing and ringing. So eventually I picked it up, and there was a man on the other side who was calling and said, "Father, I want you to open the church. I have some special guests here, and they wish to pray before the Blessed Sacrament." And I said to the man, "Well, nice idea. They could all come back at 5 o'clock when we open up for the Sunday night mass. But, you know, typically we don't open it up because of security issues." He said, "Father, I don't want to hear that. I want you to come down immediately and open up the doors." Well, I listened, and I heard this man who was quite clear about his directives. So I got out of my nap and put on my collar, went downstairs, and lo and behold, a man was there with 5 nuns, Mother Teresa of Calcutta nuns, missionary sisters of charity. And this is the ironic thing. That was a new order at the time. Nobody really knew who they were, but you can tell by their saris who they worked for, Mother Teresa. On their day off in Brooklyn, they would travel over to the Jersey City Medical Center and visit the sick as a way of praying and comforting for those who need their presence. Well, for me, it was a big chore, and I kind of considered myself on duty to bring the sacraments, but these young women were doing the work of Jesus Christ. And so I opened the doors, obviously, to the church. And one of the nuns said to me, "Father, we will pray for those who we visited today in your church, but we're going to pray for you because you opened the doors to the church." Well, to this day, that is a mantra for me, that our job as witnesses to the gospel are to open doors for people. Whether we like it or not, those people are doing the work of Christ. And I'm just a witness to this. I can't control it. I don't necessarily, I can kind of move it in a direction, perhaps, give encouragement to it, but there are real people doing Christ's work. Got to keep those doors open. So that's Act 1, Jersey City. Act 2, make preaching better. By 1980, I was the communications director of the Archdiocese of Newark, which meant that I was involved with trying to make the Archbishop and the Archdiocese look better. Well, the truth of the matter, at the very moment I was in that position as a young priest, again, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the qualifications to do it, but they yanked me to bring me into the chancery. And actually, I was working for a wonderful, extraordinary priest for a very brief period, Harold Murray, who's, again, one of the great heroes of my life. In any case, I worked for the Archbishop directly in his office, but they were sinking fast. The Archdiocese of Newark was in a financial crisis, and they were going bankrupt quickly. So it seemed that Harold Murray had a number of consultants to try to figure out how we were going to explain this to our various constituents, bankers, and whoever else controlled our purse strings. And we had a consultant at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. So this was in June of in 1980. And the consultant was a man by the name of Jack Trout. And he operated a small consulting company called Trout and Reese. And they were primarily people who did strategic planning and communication. They eventually went on to do advertising and public relations, but at this point, it was primarily branding. So the Archbishop was not listening to Mr. Trout, even though we were paying for him. So one day I said to Monsignor Murray, I said, let me go over to New York, have lunch with Jack Trout, and, we're paying for it, so I may as well learn something from the experience. Well, I learned a lot in that 1 or 2 lunches with him. I learned one thing. I came in the office and he said, Father, there is no way that we're going to explain to anybody how you lost all these millions of dollars. When you lose that much cash, it's your fault. No one's going to bail you out of that. But I have a better idea for you. Here's the idea. You and all these priests and deacons, if you're preaching, you have an extraordinary influence over the lives of people. You can make a difference. And so in his own diocese in Bridgeport, Connecticut, he was developing a plan to bring priests and laity together on a Monday or Tuesday to talk about preaching and to talk about the homily that the priest might give that weekend. And his idea for me was make preaching better. And boy, that stuck with me. I came back to Newark and I presented some of the ideas to the Archbishop, and of course it went nowhere. That was not his idea. He had other ideas. But it struck me that if we are going to make a difference, preaching is one of the tools we can bring to our community of faith. Now, here is the kicker. Trout and Reese went on to have quite an important role to play in branding, public relations, all sorts of consultants. Among them were political people like David Axelrod and the up-and-coming Barack Obama. They worked for him. And they also, at the same time, were consulting with a big New York City tycoon who was attempting to open up a casino in Atlantic City, namely Donald J. Trump. So Mr. Trout passed away just about a year ago. And I was able to glean from that obituary in the New York Times some of the little details about Trout that I didn't completely know, but he was a very committed Catholic. And I think his work really inspired me. Now, here's the last irony. I'll leave Donald Trump and we'll move on. But the irony of ironies was that I got to meet Donald Trump, the young Donald Trump, and his wife at the time, Ivanka, about the same time in 1980, while he was trying to open up a casino in Atlantic City. The Archbishop's Committee of the Laity named him the New Jersey awardee of the Archbishop's annual award for distinguished service. Obviously didn't help our economic position in the Archdiocese much, but I can remember the day that they arrived at this rather large affair at the Mayfair Farms via helicopter. And we had cameras waiting and to take photographs with the Archbishop and Donald Trump. Well, that's part of memory lane. I'll move on. The last act 3, is called Apostolic Courage. It's no secret that John Casper and I have been touched greatly by Pope Francis and a whole range of us who value his unique role in our lives as Christians. Apostolic courage comes from his many conversations about pharesia coming out of the New Testament, this idea of being zealous for the sake of the gospel. So I want to conclude with a little story about my time at St. Mary's College. It's 2015. Father Mike Russo is just about ready to conclude his experience at St. Mary's and formally retire. My last semester, I was teaching in Jan term, and I had been out of the college for a while. My office was dark, and those of you who knew where my office was, it was right on a beautiful lawn, and it was primarily glass. People could see when I was in and when I was out. So I'm coming back to teach one last class, and I knew I was going to move on, but it always has a lot of sentimentality. I put 30 years of good work there. And so I turn my lights on and people know I'm there. one of the January term classes is just about to let out, and a young man knocks on my window and on my door. Let's call him Mark. Comes in and he says to me, "Father Mike, you're back." I said, "Yep." He said, "You remember me? I'm Mark." I said, I said to me, I had you in class 3 years ago for the introduction to communication. And I want to tell you, you changed my life. Me? I changed your life? How? He said, I was missing classes, but not only your class, just about every course I was in. I was having a really difficult time with alcohol and drugs. And you told me something that I had to hear. You told me that I had to go home to my parents and get help. Well, he did. He went home, he quit St. Mary's, he lived out of the state, so he was away from people here. And he went into rehab, went to a junior college, changed a lot of his marks, came back to St. Mary's 2 years later. I had never run into him until then. And he said to me something that touched me. And the truth of the matter is, I do remember him. I do remember the conversation, but I would never have remembered it 3 years later until he brought it to my attention. And it's what we do that counts every day. And this apostolic courage isn't me, it's this kid that we're able to bring out of them something that's going to be with them for life. And so when I think of my time there, I think of it as a wonderful experience. And many of you know how devoted the Christian Brothers have been to those kids over so many, many years. Pardon me for being a little too nostalgic today, but my greatest fear, and it is a fear, is that that same level of proximity and presence that I was able to have and the brothers are able to have is diminished. There's no doubt about that. But I hold deep in my heart that work. And the many people have come to my aid, especially now with our Sunday to Sunday project. I can count my just about everybody, my director, my lawyer, my business manager, and so many of you who have made this really a worthwhile experience for me. So, three things: open doors, make preaching better, and most of all, have the courage to do it. So with that, I'll open to questions.
Thanks very much, Mike, for those 3 chapters. And the stories give shape so much more, because isn't that a big part of what preaching is? It's the storytelling. So thanks for sharing those stories. So if anybody that might have a question at this time, you can either raise your hand on screen, or you've got your reaction button at the bottom that can, Mary Ellen, make sure you unmute yourself. Mary Ellen, unmute.
Yeah.
There you go.
Father Mike, what are you doing Sunday to Sunday?
Well, Sunday to Sunday is a program that attempts to make preaching better. And we're just about ready to complete the 13th episode, which is a 1-hour documentary on St. Monica's, not in Moraga, but St. Monica's in Santa Monica, under the tremendous leadership of Lloyd Torgerson. We're doing a 1-hour documentary about what does a church do during the pandemic. So our program is now being distributed on cable, online. We're attempting to broaden our viewer base. We have done everything we can to get attention. We are going to be using the St. Monica episode to really jumpstart our public relations and trying to get us to a way in which we can do our program nationally. As some of you know, not only did we begin this 4 years ago, with many of you helped that, but in 3 years we won an Emmy, which is like, if I told you 3 years ago or 4 years ago that we would win an Emmy last June, you would think I was delusional. It doesn't really happen that quickly, but I think the idea is good. Many of you supported me in that idea, and we hope to continue it. So Sunday to Sunday attempts to bring the best preachers into video, and to do it with a very close eye. There's no secret that the 12 episodes that we've already done are loosely based on Inside the Actor's Studio with James Lipton, where I have the opportunity of interviewing a great preacher and then talk about it. So, Christoph, why don't we do this? Let's go to the first of the videos, because we're going to see a great preacher. This is a shortened version of the program, but let's watch the first opening few minutes of the very first of the videos. It'll answer Mary Ellen's question. Welcome to Sunday. I'm with Father John Casper, the pastor of St. Perpetua in Lafayette, California. Hello, John.
Hi, Mike. Good to be with you.
I've been following your preaching for a long time, and you're among the most accomplished preachers I know, and you're well prepared. Do you have a characteristic to say about your particular form of preaching?
I'm a copycat. I've had such good mentors over the years of preachers with wonderful styles, each one unique to each of them. And I've tried over my 41 years of priesthood to reflect the best qualities of all of them. So I'm lucky to have had good mentors.
You call yourself a hunter and gatherer. What do you mean?
As priests, we have both, I think, the opportunity and the responsibility of having access to the best of scriptural scholarship, to the best of theological and moral thinking. Because of that, then we have the opportunity to bring thoughts and ideas that others don't have that same access to. So I hunt around all the time, finding the action of the Spirit, the work of God, wherever you can, and then gather that together and share that with the community. And you have a complete collection of all these homilies on your parish website. The last time I was at St. Perpetua, you were building a new community center. And I'm curious, in our time of COVID and shelter in place, how have you adapted to the community that is now probably online? Well, that was one of the biggest heartbreaks after the human suffering, is to have a brand new community center, only 1 year old, and not to be able to use it, and not to be able to gather in our spaces. So I've looked for alternative ways to keep the community gathered together. So on Sunday, we have an online service of the Word, twice on Sunday, using the Zoom platform. On Wednesdays, we have a parish town hall. Each Wednesday, a different topic that we cover, oftentimes from various people in the community that make presentations or bringing in other people with a topic of interest. So for instance, next week, we're asking the doctors in our community to talk to us about how their medical work has been impacted by the pandemic. And then on Friday mornings, the women group leads the rosary. We have a Bible study online. So a wide variety of ways to keep the community together and give them an opportunity, especially through Zoom, to see one another as you and I are right now.
I should tell our America Magazine audience that for the complete interview with Father John Casper, simply go to our new website, sundaytosunday.net. Today we're going to be presenting John Casper, the preacher. We are looking at and going to be hearing his homily for the 33rd Sunday of the church year. It comes at almost toward the end of the liturgical year, where the master is settling accounts in Matthew's gospel. I'm curious, this is a very challenging piece of scripture. However, you're able to give what I consider a very optimistic view. You say that we are co-creators of his kingdom, entrusted with the unique talent that belongs to God. Could you explain?
Isn't that what stewardship is? God entrusts us with capabilities and then expects that we're going to use them for the good of all and for the building up of the kingdom, for making this world a better place. I think that also leads to a pastor, for instance, being very collegial in drawing in the gifts and talents of all of us who are baptized as servants of God. So stewardship is key, and there's a warning in that gospel to those who refuse to use their gifts or who bury them and hide them.
Well, John, your gift as a preacher and a pastor are inspirational. Let's go to Father John Casper's homily.
Do you
Now they-
recall the end of Act 1 of the movie Wizard of Oz? The four unlikely traveling companions, Dorothy, the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion, are off to see the wizard in Emerald City. Each is in need of something or someone who will help them, who will secure for them what each one needs to be whole, to be free, to be at home. The Wicked Witch of the West threatens them along the way, but now they are very close. They can see the Emerald City of Oz in the distance. The witch tries again. She creates a beautiful field of poppies, but the scent of the poppy flower is poisonous, and Dorothy falls into a deep sleep. Her traveling companions are afraid that they might have to abandon their vital quest. That poppy flower is a symbol of death. The ancient Greeks and Romans gave them as offerings to the dead, and Egyptians placed poppies in their burial tombs, and tombstones often are decorated with a poppy emblem. But the poppy also symbolizes the dangers of another kind of death: complacency and apathy, qualities that lull us into drifting along in our lives instead of living fully and freely. How many times are you and I stymied by fear and anxiety? We fail to act because we lack the courage it takes to do the right thing, to make the difficult choice, act out of our convictions, or face the challenge of tackling head-on the issue or problem confronting us. It's worse than procrastination. It can feel like we're in the darkness, locked out and helpless. If only we could take the Lord at His word, we can, with God's grace, overcome whatever obstacles we face. The psalmist today assures us, "Blessed are you who fear the Lord and walk in His ways, for you shall eat the fruit of your handiwork. Blessed shall you be and favored." Through challenging scriptures during these last Sundays of the church year, we're reminded that it's up.
They hear me every week, Mike, so
It's a great homily.
they
I
don't-
just wanted to, bring it to a conclusion. It exists on our website, sundaytosunday.net. And you could check it all out. That's a briefer version of the half hour. By the way, John Casper was the very first person to say, yeah, we'll do this. It grew out of our friendship, but it also grew out of the fact that when I taught at St. Mary's, I taught a course, Religion, Media, and Culture. And again, I was always following preaching as a form of communication. And I would invite preachers like John to my class. Then I would have my students go out and evaluate their experience of church, and particularly the homily at Catholic and other religious ceremonies, and for other Christian groups and Jewish as well. And it was quite instructive to me. So I'll leave it there.
Mike, one of the questions Marie Zeiser is asking is, what drew you to the priesthood?
Oh my gosh. Well, you were, here's my pat answer to that. It's a little like any of you who are married 50 years, you try to remember, why did we get married 50 years ago? It's a little like that. I always say to people like, yeah, I'm a priest 50 years, but I decided to become a priest the minute I met John Casper. And people say, well, that's impossible because you've only met him really since you come to California. But my response is, yeah, when I see someone as devoted and as inspiring as he is, it renews what I always wanted to be, that same kind of minister of the gospel. To be very honest, I had extraordinarily supportive parents. I had a cousin of mine who was an extraordinary world traveler and priest, who was a Salesian by background as a religious order. And as a kid, I was inspired by him. He was an Italian who was held captive in Macau during World War II. And his stories of ministry and priesthood, talk about apostolic zeal. My cousin Guido, his name is Guido, lived an amazing life. And so that always kind of brings you from one stage to the next. Certainly somebody like Lloyd Torgerson down in Santa Monica has inspired me this past year. So that question is always one that is in the forefront of my mind, just to stay doing what I'm doing. The old Jesuit adage, age quo agis, do what you're doing and you're going to find new ways in which you can follow Jesus Christ. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's the one I kind of give people.
Okay. We all need those people who in our lives who inspire us, and they're the ones that do keep us going. Mike,
John, I have a question or a comment. Doug Brown.
Hey,
Carol
Doug.
Brown. Hi, Mike. I've followed Mike for I can't tell you how many years. Since 1998, my wife reminds me, and I'm a convert, and I'm a true Roman Catholic, because after we left St. Monica's, I roamed from church to church looking for a pastor. And with the help of Mike, and we met John Casper. And when we're here in the summers, we're in Lake Tahoe, but when we're here, we enjoy the homilies that we get from listening to John Casper. But the most important thing is that the friendship that we've developed with Mike Russo, he's been a real counselor. I think about him. I think of who's the other priest at St. Monica's that we've known over the years. Michael Galvin. Well, it started with Galvin. Michael Galvin was the reason I converted to be a Catholic. It was he meant so much to me. But we appreciate what Mike has brought to us as individuals. He's been a real friend. And what he's doing in this Sunday to Sunday is remarkable. It's remarkable. And
I have to say, Carolyn and Doug were able to give us a really big tip. If you have a chance, take a look at our website, sundaytosunday.net, and you'll see Father Bill Nadeau, who is a pastor up there in Lake Tahoe. Talk about a dynamic priest and great preacher. He breaks the mold.
Yes, he does. And we miss him. He's retired.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you, Mike. And thank you, John Casper, for what you do.
You're welcome, Doug. Ernie, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hello, Father Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are the Perucci's? How's grandfatherhood? I think I met Ernie like the first week I was in Moraga. He's
my eldest grandchild is now 20, a sophomore in college, and we're going to go into Texas next month to celebrate the 18th birthday and high school graduation of number 2 of 5. Your statement about St. Mary's, which I think applies to many Catholic colleges, was, I think, very insightful, because there's a depth that the brothers, people such as you, people such as Dan Cawthon, brought to opening doors and an excellence, maybe not in preaching so much as genuine evangelization by just having people read books and seriously consider them, right? And as the brothers fade, which they are doing, and as people such as you and Danny Cawthon leave the earth in terms of Dan and the college, what are your thoughts? If you could do three things for a place like St. Mary's, and I say St. Mary's is not unique in this situation, to bring back some of that personal touch that help people deepen their intellectual and spiritual lives and intertwine them, what would those three things be?
Well, I don't have any magic answers. It's like putting the genie back in the bottle.
There are none.
I do think good things are going on there. I still read the faculty email, as much as I can bear to read it. I'll leave it at that. I hope the new president, takes a considerable interest in the Catholic intellectual tradition, the great books tradition. But it's really the person to person, heart to heart. I was there maybe I was living in Camelot, but when I got there, even though there were arguments, and you were very central to pointing out to me and others the Catholic character of the college, but with Brother Mel and Brother Jerome West, and Brother William Beatty, those are three brothers who knew their task. I mean, they did it well, and I'm enormously grateful to Brother Mel for hiring me and really giving me the mandate to do what I did as chairman for 15 years, or a little less than 15, but a good part of it. And we did good things together. I don't know what prescription I would give. I could describe it. I could describe that it needs a stronger emphasis, and a lot of it has to do, believe it or not, with human as well as financial support. I mean, it needs money as well as the kind of people who are going to be serious about the Catholic and intellectual tradition of that school. So maybe that's I'm waffling here, but yeah, any suggestions, Ernie?
If I had the magic potion, I'd be selling it to Catholic schools. No, I don't know if people realize this, but the total cost of attendance at St. Mary's College of California is $70,000 per student per year.
Yeah.
And I appeared in one of your classes, which I thoroughly enjoyed meeting the students. I did a Zoom thing on one of the metaphysics class. And the number one thing those students wanted to talk about was how they're getting crushed, crushed by the debt that they're taking on.
Yeah.
And I just don't see how it's a Lasallian. There's something out of whack just right there. That
yeah. We also you mentioned Dan Cawthon, but I have to mention Ron Olowin as well.
Ron, yeah.
There were people in every department that really inspired me as a faculty member coming in there. I loved going to faculty meetings at the time. Brother Rayfield Patton could be a nighttime entertainer anywhere. I mean, he ran those meetings with such humor and good grace. And every department, and for those of you who don't know, every department in 1984 had a Christian brother who was an outstanding teacher, not just a good teacher, but like the best of the best. And, I know that there are good people doing things, and there are a lot of, women and men who work very hard there. But, I was there at a kind of very precious time in my life, and that's why I stayed as long as I did. Okay, enough intramural St. Mary's stuff. Let's move on to.
Well, there is a question from another Lasallian educator, Andrew Burks, who's on the faculty at De La Salle High School.
Yeah.
He has a question.
Oh, Andrew, how are you?
Hey, Father Mike, it's great to see you. And I apologize in advance for my choppy Wi-Fi.
You look like you're in the car.
I am in the car.
I hope you're not driving.
I'm doing daddy duty, waiting for my daughter's dance class to be done. But
All right.
but it's so good to see you. And I do have a real question, circling back around to preaching, but I also do want to chime in on the accolades of what an amazing person you are, what an incredible pastor you are. And I remember meeting you when Rick Kronk was training me to be an altar boy at St. Monica when I was a little boy, and how you stayed with us and our family, and you made great sacrifices to baptize our first godchild and to renew my parents' 50th wedding, their vows for their 50th wedding anniversary. And so really appreciate everything that you're doing, Father Mike. And it's really special to be here. And my question for you is, I don't want this to be a leading question, but you are in search of great preachers all over the country, everywhere. And have you found any, I guess, similarities, like whether it's, are there any, I mean, do you just see a diversity of demographics, of urban versus suburban, of, you know, age-wise, as far as the great preachers you see? Do you see a diversity, or do you see that there's some trends besides the fact of people just investing in, you know, preparing, any similar trends that you see of some of the greatest preachers that you see in our Catholic world?
Well, you know, whenever I do one of these episodes, it's like going on retreat, because we really do have to guarantee that where we're going has something to offer, right? I mean, you gotta do a lot of preliminary research. But, you know, here's a little thing I learned. This may sound like, didn't you know this? In order to be an inspired preacher, you got to be an inspired person, right? I mean, that has to be really authentic. So when you see Bill Nadeau, when you see Father Chris Walsh in Philadelphia, I mean, these are people that are inspiring. They are inspired. But here's a little clue. They're kind of all outliers. They're not people who are going to give you the Chancery Office answer to any question, nor are they all that interested in, you know, getting all the theology right all the time. They're pastors of souls. They actually they're authentic. They're visiting hospitals. One trick I learned from, I mean, it's not a trick, but it's a good thing to do. With the pastor down in Los Angeles, down in Santa Monica, turns out that he has all of his staff given the names of people in the parish that need a phone call. And what he'll do is he will spend one day, like morning or afternoon, simply calling people who need their support, his support. And he's an extraordinary pastor in that regard. And all of these individuals are very good at that. So and there's a great sensitivity. There's, again, proximity and presence make for a great leadership in that form of ministry. But we're all in ministry. We're all disciples of Christ. Everyone, it's not only the priest. I mean, when I was ordained 50 years ago, we thought the priests were going to be doing it all. Hardly. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for your question, Andrew.
No, thank you.
Mike Kistner, unmute. Not yet.
There he is.
Hey, I just wanted to say a couple of things. You mentioned Father Mel, or Brother Mel, and you're dating me because he was my high school principal at St. Mary's High School in Berkeley. And then he went from there on to St. Mary's College, as you know. But I did want to mention something about apostolic courage. I used to cantor at St. Perpetua Sunday mornings at 9:30 Mass or 8 o'clock Mass, but I moonlighted at St. Monica's for the 5 o'clock Mass. Typically, Lino Rivera would be playing piano with me, and he also taught music at St. Mary's College. But there were a lot of funerals that I did at St. Monica. And I'll never forget the first time I met Father Declan Dean. Right before we started the funeral Mass, he came up to me and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, St. Perpetua, but I do sing quite a bit here at St. Monica." He said, "Oh, St. Perpetua, Father Frank Hodak." And I said, "Yeah, Father Frank, you know him?" He said, "Father Frank saved my life." And this relates to that student that came back to you, Mike, who had the alcohol and drug problem. The very first time I met Father Declan Dean, he said, Father Frank saved my life. He said, I'm an alcoholic. He said, Father Frank helped me through it. Otherwise, I would have died. And I thought, wow, for Declan to be that open to me,
Yeah.
he had just met me. It just endeared me to him that he
The
would
greatest thing about that parish,
that
St.
kind of
Monica,
information with me, a stranger. But I got to do a lot of masses with him after that. But it was so touching to me that he would tell me his story right away and how Father Frank saved his life.
well, Declan Dean inspired my entire Sunday to Sunday program. I'll be candid. I mean, those of us who knew him well and respected him. I remember coming to St. Monica's thanks to a wonderful invitation by Kath McGee to kind of be in the rectory while, I also taught full time at St. Mary's. I was there, I think, 8 years. Declan was an extraordinary person. And isn't it ironic that the two best pastors that I knew of are the Pope and Declan Dean, both of whom are Jesuits, right? And I often said that when I first heard Declan preach, as you may remember, we would rotate the preacher. The priest was, I think Michael Galvin started this, where, or maybe Brian Joyce, you would hear the other priest preach every third or fourth Sunday. So I'm listening to Declan, then listening to Donald Gottfried, occasionally Jude Siciliano would fly through, and I'd be sitting there in the priest chair, the presider's chair saying, Michael, you better get better. These guys are really good. And then Declan had one thing that no one else had: humor. He could turn a phrase and the church would be in hysterics.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember his wonderful homily where he goes to find Jesus on top of a mountain at one of the great national parks and comes down, and he's asking God to, really, enlighten his life and, give him the right path, right spiritual path. But then as he comes down the hill, he can't find his car. So he's praying to the Lord can you at least get me my car? I'm completely lost in this parking lot. It was the church was in complete hysterics. You are also aware of the fact that John Dean, Declan Dean's brother, is probably one of the top poets in Ireland and around the world. And so they have kind of a genetic code that I think is superior to most of us.
I was going to say, Mike, they have an unfair advantage. Declan is from Ireland.
Yeah.
Humor and just pure delight is one of their strong suits. Mike, I want to take it back, though, a little bit to the history and to the 60s. I was fascinated, that you were desk assistant to Walter Cronkite. Give us some insight into, what was that like, especially in light of what media,
has become
doing today. Yeah.
Well, I had parents who were always, supporting me, in a million ways. And I look back at them and they're now deceased, of course, but they looked out for me. I never played sports. I mean, I had weird interests. I liked going to the opera at a young age. My dad loved going to musical theater. So my favorite, experience as my father was actually getting the best seats in the house at great Broadway plays. But one thing I was always interested in was the intersection of the church and the media. And even when I was looking at a seminary or even becoming a seminarian, yes, I looked at the Paulists. Yes, I looked at the Jesuits. Yes, I looked at other religious orders that had some form of media or were doing that kind of ministry. But that I stayed with the diocesan priesthood. So how did I get the job at CBS? Basically, my father was very actively involved in politics. He was a bundler by today's terminology. He was able to support candidates. There was a candidate running in New Jersey that my father supported, and the candidate lost. However, his brother was an executive producer at CBS News, and in charge of the special events unit, which ran things like conventions, elections, moonshots, and anything that had to do with the death or the election of a pope. So I have with me here my press credential. If you can see this, I'll hold it up. This is my CBS News press credential from 1969, where I was the desk assistant to Walter Cronkite for Man on the Moon, The Epic Journey of Apollo 11. On the back of this historic thing is Walter Cronkite's signature with Wally Schirra and with Arthur C. Clarke. So it's part of my little history. I wrote a lengthy article that came out in a magazine at the time of the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. And by the way, Michael Collins passed away, and he was one of the many, I can't say I was palsy-walsy with astronauts, but they did kind of fly through our office, as well as the celebrity, people who were part of the CBS News when CBS News was kind of the news division of record. But I always kept that experience, always kept those relationships. I impressed, I guess, my bosses, so they kept me on even as a priest to primarily do the research for the elections of popes. So I have with me, and I don't have all of them. I didn't want to drag them all out, but this was the credential I wore when Pope John Paul II passed away, and I was flown off to Rome, and it was a kind of a wonderful experience. Rick and Janet joined me at one point during this wonderful period of my life. They were in Rome just serendipitously around the same time when the Pope was, when Pope Benedict was elected. It was a little after the death of John Paul. These are the credentials for the papal trip, Pope Francis's trip to the United States. There's an ironic story here because I was working actually for the USCCB, the Catholic bishops, and I was in the control room kind of monitoring the producer and executive producer, who were the pool producers for the Pope Francis trip to the United States. So it turns out that company, the next big thing they had to do was Republican National Convention. And there was a member of the Republican National Committee who was basically watching the production in the production truck with us. Turns out that the person sitting next to me for like a week was none other than Sean Spicer, who would go on to even greater fame in Dancing with the Stars, let alone the White House. So you never know who you're going to be with. And I was extremely lucky, and I loved doing it. So the minute I knew I was going to retire from St. Mary's College, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to recreate my television program, New Jersey Catholic, for a worldwide, or at least a national audience, which we can now do in a way that we could not do in any other era. So I'm going to ask Christoph to show the next little video, just a few minutes of it. You'll get a kick out of this. This is Mike Russo in 1978 doing his New Jersey Catholic.
New Jersey Catholic, produced by the Office of Communications of the Archdiocese of Newark, with your host, Father Mike Russo.
Rome, the Eternal City, is an important part of our own life as Catholics because it's the place where the Vatican and the Pope are. We have as a guest today Mr. Frank Korn, who is a writer who has just recently wrote a new book entitled From Peter to John Paul II. In writing this, he has described for us an informal anecdotal study of the papacy, among other of his writings. We'll join him after this short break.
John Paul II takes his primary title as Bishop of Rome very, very seriously. He does take a great interest in diocesan affairs, and he likes to get out into the streets among the people. He was walking one day soon after his election in the streets near St. Peter's, which you are very familiar with, Father, I'm sure. And he happened to be passing a religious article store, and he stopped to talk to a cluster of people outside. One of the sales girls inside, Victoria, came running out all excited, and she said, "Holy Father, I'm getting married in a couple of weeks. Would you perform the ceremony?" And he thought for just a split second and said, "Perché no? Why not?" And he performed the ceremony
Which is really
in
unheard
Pauline
of.
Chapel
Yeah.
2 Sundays later. And at the end of that, to show you again the human side of this wonderful man, Victoria, still exuberant, still uninhibited, and despite the trappings of the Vatican here in the Pauline Chapel, frescoed by Michelangelo as well as the Sistine, she said to him at the end of the ceremony, "Le posso dare un bacio? Can I give you a kiss?" And again he said, "E perché no? And why not?"
Sure.
Well, that's me. So, what goes around comes around. I'm doing the same thing, but, thanks to the resources of your many generous people, and thanks to the resources of the new technology, we're able to do this, right? And, when I was a kid watching Edward R. Murrow doing Person to Person on CBS, little did I think of then that we'd be doing it like here, where you're in Lafayette and I'm here in Monterey, and it's quite astonishing. So we're harnessing the new technology. Let me also go back to one thing I should say: that New Jersey Catholic program. If I were to tell you some of the alumni from that program, who not only did my program but also did a lot of sports, Billy Raftery was one of our guests. Bob Lee, who is at ESPN, is now retired. I can list a dozen people. Now, interestingly enough, more recently, one of the young people I hired to be my production assistant, whose name is Dominic Ambrosio, after we get the Emmy, he calls me up and says, "You know what? Let me come in and help you." And well, Dominic is now our executive producer. And the good news about it, and this will lighten your spirits, we finally signed our first contract. Well, we're getting money from a distributor, which to me is like, we're getting there. We're moving along. It's not a lot of money, but it's some money, and helps pay some of the bills. And we're looking, of course, to raise more money. And that's just the nature of what any enterprise like this is about.
And I know that any help that you can receive from 94549 would be greatly appreciated to Mike's Sunday to Sunday program.
Well,
Mary,
I have to say your zip code is the highest supporter by far of any of the other zip codes in the United States or U.S. possessions. But in case you know anybody on Tortola or anywhere in the British Virgin Islands that wants to send us money, we could use it.
we'll find out. Mary Kuhn, you had a question, and that'll be our closing one for the evening.
Okay, thank you, Father John. Father Russo, this kind of harkens back to what you were talking about with your media and communication expertise. I just would be curious to know your assessment of how the American Catholic Church is showing up in the media today. I follow social media a lot. I need to because of my job. And I do see so much division. So what advice or guidance would you have to the American Catholic Church in today's kind of, slightly better, but still somewhat charged and tribalistic media environment?
Well, that's the word, tribalistic, right? Yeah. I mean, if you have a chance of looking at Church Militant for all of like 15 seconds, they're describing a world that I don't live in, but they think that's the Catholic Church, right? And they're pushing that brand of the Catholic Church. It's very scary. And I don't see much leadership among the bishops as a whole. They have a hard time even talking to one another. There are obviously two different branches of at least two, maybe more. But I think we got to go back to supporting what is the basic ministry of the church. Lloyd Torgerson down at Santa Monica was among the first priests to speak directly to comments that had come out of the Vatican with regard to gays that seemed surly and unhelpful, if nothing else. I'll leave it at that. But Mary, I have a concern about this, a long-term concern, where people are, taking their cues from the kind of tribalistic and bombastic media, and instead of trying to best represent the gospel. Let me give you an example.
Mhm.
One of the parishioners at St. Monica's in Santa Monica is a young man by the name of Jeremy Rumi, who is the Jesus in The Chosen, a wonderful TV series, crowdsourced, Bible directed. Jeremy's a wonderful Catholic and doing some good things. And you can get The Chosen on your phone. It's an app, and it's crowdsourced. In other words, real people out there are supporting it. And I think we've got to investigate some of those ways in which we can bypass the ideology and get to have a medium of support for Catholics and Christians just generally, and people of goodwill. I think what you're doing at St. Monica's, having your own particular identity with meetings like this is extraordinarily helpful. A few years ago, John knows this, I was taking a good look at St. Matthew's, the Lutheran church in Walnut Creek, where they've been doing this kind of media ministry for quite a long time. And it really needs a team. I mean, the reason why St. Monica's in Santa Monica works, it's television city in Hollywood. I mean, you have so many people who are so professional in the media that they were able to pull together quite an impressive way in which they are doing church via Zoom during this whole period. But it's going to open up all sorts of avenues for young people to express their creativity. And I mean, by young people, I mean people who are in grade school doing, things in religious ed and what have you, with cameras and with ways in which they can show their faith. So it's not only the powerful media, but I think the media in people's hands. And actually, it's this thing, the phone.
Great.
Thank you.
Mike,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much. And Mary, that was a great question. Thank you. And Mike, thanks so much.
Well, I did want to show you my visitor. This is the Emmy Award. Again, much to my shock, we won it. And for whatever it does, it has opened some doors for us, and that's probably a good thing.
It is a great thing. That's your first act, opening doors. So thanks for opening the door to your ministry, both yesterday, the past, and today, and for a great future with something that's so critical, the art of preaching. And you're right, that pulpit is an influential place, and we only pray that every community uses it. And my prayer is also that the church will open its hands and eyes to expand that pulpit to incorporate many more.
Well, let me say, I mean, in our next series of 13 episodes, our goal is to bring in, youth ministers, lay women. We've got to open that preaching experience. And we hope that by showing these models of good preaching, it'll inspire others to take on that ministry.
Great. Thanks again, Mike. We're so glad to have you. It's really fun and exciting to hear all this.
Bring me back. I'm more than happy.
We'll have you back. I wanted to let everybody know next Wednesday on our town hall gathering, Brother Mickey McGrath will be back with us. Next Wednesday is May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And I asked him if he would do something. It's Mary's month, and Our Lady of Guadalupe and Cinco de Mayo. So he's going to look at the Southwest heritage of our country and the Dark Madonna of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and some images that will inspire a celebration, even for us gringos, of Cinco de Mayo. So plan on joining us.
And John, could I ask Christoph, to just simply, at the very end of this, simply put up our website, sundaytosunday.net. All of the production that we've done is available. You could watch them, and there's study guides, transcripts, ways in which you can reflect on good preachers. And John Casper is #1. He was the first production,
The guinea pig.
but not in my book.
Great. Okay, well, have a good evening, everyone. And thanks again, Mike. It's so good to have you with us.
Thank you, guys. It was great. Nice
Thank you.
being with you.
You're welcome, Doug.
Thank you. That was
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
Thank
The best
you.
one so far, the best.